The acid rain hissed against Nexus's armored hide as he lay among the wreckage of what was once the pride of the Craxian Empire's fleet. His enhanced muscles, usually capable of tearing through reinforced hull plating, now trembled with exhaustion. The battlefield stretched endlessly before him, a graveyard of twisted metal and broken dreams on the planet designated only as KX-249. Every breath sent waves of agony through his cybernetically augmented body. The Craxians had engineered him to be the perfect weapon, a fusion of advanced genetic manipulation and cutting-edge technology. His kind, the Sentinel Hounds, were living legends among the Empire's forces. They led charges into enemy lines, protected high-value targets, and struck fear into the hearts of all who opposed Craxian dominion. But now, as toxic clouds roiled overhead and his internal systems flashed warning after warning, Nexus understood the cruel truth. He was never more than a tool to them. When the peace treaties were signed and the war machines ground to a halt, the Empire had no use for weapons that could think for themselves. They had abandoned him here, along with countless others of his kind, to die on this forsaken rock. His neural interface crackled with static, the quantum-linked connection to his handler now nothing but dead air. For the first time in his existence, there were no orders to follow, no missions to complete, just silence and pain. A memory surfaced through the haze of agony. His last battle. The Sentinel Hounds had been deployed to hold this strategic position against a coalition force. They had fought with the ferocity and precision they were bred for, but a direct hit from an orbital strike had scattered their ranks. Nexus had taken the brunt of the blast, his specialized armor absorbing most of the impact, but leaving him critically wounded. He had expected his handlers to retrieve him, to repair him as they had countless times before. Instead, they had simply left. The evacuation ships had risen into the purple-black sky without so much as a backward glance. The Empire's perfect weapon had become nothing more than another piece of discarded war material. Nexus's enhanced vision began to fade, the world growing dim around the edges. His regenerative systems were failing, unable to cope with the combination of severe injuries and the caustic atmosphere. Each heartbeat seemed to echo in his ears, growing fainter with every passing moment. A distant part of him wondered if this was what fear felt like. The Craxians had engineered their Sentinel Hounds to be fearless, but they had never quite managed to completely suppress their capacity for emotion. Perhaps that had been their fatal flaw, creating weapons that could think and feel, then expecting them to simply accept being discarded. As consciousness began to slip away, Nexus caught a strange scent on the toxic wind, something different from the acrid smell of burning metal and chemical rain, something that didn't belong on this dead world. His cybernetically enhanced ears picked up an unfamiliar hum growing steadily louder. With the last of his strength, Nexus turned his massive head toward the sound. Through the poisonous fog, he glimpsed the silhouette of a ship, but not one of Craxian design. Its lines were softer, its engine signature unlike anything in his vast combat database. His systems were too damaged to run a proper analysis, but one word managed to flash across his failing neural interface: human. The Empire had taught him that humans were weak, inferior beings who relied on cooperation rather than strength, on innovation rather than tradition. They were everything the Craxians despised: adaptable, unpredictable, and worst of all, compassionate. As darkness finally claimed him, Nexus felt something he had never experienced before: hope. Not hope for rescue. He was a weapon of the enemy after all, but hope that perhaps his final moments would be witnessed by beings who saw value in more than just military utility. The human vessel descended through the caustic clouds, its searchlights cutting through the gloom, unaware that they were about to change not just the fate of one abandoned warhound, but the course of galactic history itself. Dr. Sarah Chen had seen her share of horrors during the war, but something about this battlefield made her chest tighten. Through the reinforced viewport of the research vessel Horizon, she watched the toxic storms rage across the scared landscape of KX-249. The ship's sensors were picking up traces of advanced technology scattered everywhere. The aftermath of one of the war's final battles. Life sign holding steady at grid point Echo 7, reported Marcus Wong from his station at the sensor array. It's weak, but definitely there. Whatever it is, it's got some serious tech integrated into its biological systems. Sarah leaned over his shoulder, studying the readouts. In this environment, nothing should be alive down there. The atmospheric acid content alone would. She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes widening as the ship's cameras zoomed in on the source of the signal. "Holy shit," Marcus whispered. "That's a sentinel hound." The creature lay sprawled amid the wreckage, its armored form easily twice the size of an Earth wolf. Even badly damaged, its cybernetic enhancements were unmistakable. The neural interface ports along its spine, the reinforced muscle structure visible through torn armor plating, the faint glow of failing power cells beneath its skin. Captain David Rivera's voice crackled over the intercom. "Dr. Chen, please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking." "David, we can't just leave it to die," Sarah replied, already reaching for her environmental suit. "This could be our chance to understand Craxian bioengineering up close. Think of what we could learn." "Think of what that thing was designed to do," Rivera cut in. "Those creatures tore through entire platoons during the war. They're living weapons, Doctor." Sarah sealed her helmet with practiced efficiency. "They're living beings, Captain. And this one has been abandoned by its masters. That makes it our responsibility. Our responsibility is to survey post-war zones for scientific data, not rescue enemy combatants," Rivera argued, but Sarah could hear the resignation in his voice. He knew her too well. Once she set her mind on something, there was no talking her out of it. "Then consider this a scientific recovery mission," she countered, checking her med scanner. "Marcus, prep the containment bay. Captain, I need a security team to accompany me groundside. Full environmental gear and stunners only." The rescue operation was a race against time. Even with their advanced environmental suits, the team could only stay exposed to the planet's atmosphere for 20 minutes before the acid began compromising their protection. Sarah worked methodically, her med scanner interfacing with the Sentinel Hound's neural ports while the security team stood ready. Up close, the creature was even more impressive. Its armor bore the marks of countless battles, and beneath the damage, Sarah could see the incredible complexity of its engineering. This wasn't just a weapon. It was a masterpiece of biological and technological integration. "Life signs critical but stabilizing," she reported, administering a broad-spectrum neural stabilizer. "Its regenerative systems are trying to repair the damage, but they're overwhelmed. We need to move fast." The security team deployed a gravity lift, carefully maneuvering the massive form onto it. Sarah noticed something as they worked. The creature's eyes were tracking their movements. Despite its grievous injuries, it was aware, watching them with an intelligence that made her breath catch. "It's okay," she found herself whispering, placing a gloved hand on its armored head. "We're going to help you." The Sentinel Hound's eyes locked onto hers, and in that moment, Sarah saw something that would change everything. Recognition, not of an enemy, but of something its Craxian masters had tried to eliminate from its genetic code. Hope. Back aboard the Horizon, as the containment bay doors sealed and decontamination protocols began, Captain Rivera stood watching the unconscious form of their new guest through reinforced glass. "I hope you know what you're doing, Sarah," he said quietly. Sarah began preparing surgical equipment, her mind already racing with possibilities. "So do I, David. But sometimes the biggest breakthroughs come from taking chances, and something tells me this one is worth the risk." What none of them realized was that this act of mercy would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything both humans and Craxians believed about the nature of consciousness, loyalty, and what it truly meant to be alive. The first time Nexus fully regained consciousness, he discovered something unprecedented: silence. Not in his surroundings, which hummed with the unfamiliar rhythms of a human vessel, but in his mind. The constant stream of commands, protocols, and control signals that had dominated his neural interface since activation was gone. Dr. Sarah Chen noticed the change immediately. The massive creature's vitals spiked, its enhanced muscles tensing as awareness returned. She kept her movements slow and deliberate as she approached the containment field. "Easy there, big guy," she said softly. "You're safe. We've temporarily disabled your neural transmitters to prevent system shock during recovery." Nexus processed this information with growing confusion. His combat protocols screamed for him to attack, to eliminate the human threat, but something else gave him pause. The absence of Craxian control signals had left space in his mind for something new: choice. Over the next few weeks, the Horizon's medical bay became a battleground of a different sort. Not one fought with weapons and teeth, but with patience and understanding. Sarah spent hours each day with Nexus, studying his incredible biology, while simultaneously helping him navigate his newfound autonomy. "His neural architecture is amazing," she explained to Captain Rivera during one of their daily briefings. "The Craxians didn't just enhance his physical capabilities, they created an entirely new form of consciousness, but they never expected it to develop beyond their control." Rivera watched through the observation window as Nexus carefully manipulated holographic puzzles Sarah had designed to test his cognitive abilities. "That's what worries me, Doctor. We're dealing with an intelligence that was specifically engineered to be a weapon. How can we trust it won't revert to its programming?" Sarah corrected gently, nodded, "and that's exactly why we need to trust him. The more we treat him as a thinking, feeling being, the more he can break free from his original programming." Meanwhile, Nexus was fighting his own internal battle. Every interaction with the human crew challenged centuries of Craxian conditioning. He observed their social structures, so different from the rigid hierarchies he had known. They collaborated rather than commanded, supported rather than dominated. Most puzzling of all was Dr. Chen. Her dedication to his recovery defied all logic by Craxian standards. She gained nothing from helping him. And yet she persisted, treating him not as a weapon to be controlled, but as a patient to be healed. One evening, as she was adjusting his neural stabilizers, Nexus made a decision that would have been impossible weeks ago. Using the communication interface Sarah had designed, he formed his first voluntary words: "Why help enemy?" Sarah's hand stilled on her medical scanner. "Because you're not our enemy anymore. You're a patient, a refugee, and if you want to be, maybe someday a friend." The concept of friendship was alien to Nexus's programming, but in that moment, something within him shifted. The rigid pathways of his combat protocols began to reorganize, creating new connections, new possibilities. But peace aboard the Horizon was about to be shattered. Deep in space, a Craxian retrieval beacon, dormant since Nexus's neural systems came back online, had begun broadcasting. The signal carried a simple message: property of the Empire located. Coordinates following. Recovery priority Alpha. The human crew had no way of detecting the quantum-encrypted transmission, but Nexus's enhanced senses picked up the faint echo. For the first time in his existence, he felt something that overrode all of his combat protocols. Fear, not for himself, but for these humans who had shown him a different way of existing. As Sarah worked late into the night, unaware of the approaching danger, Nexus made another choice. His loyalty subroutines had been programmed for absolute obedience to the Empire, but they had never accounted for something as powerful as freely given trust. Using his restored neural interface, he began composing a warning message. The humans had given him the gift of choice. Now he would give them the gift of preparation. The Craxians were coming, and this time, Nexus knew exactly which side he would choose to fight for. The warning came at ship's midnight. Nexus's message flashed across every console on the Horizon's bridge. Caracas, IN, Hunters AP Proroching. Retrieval TAM inbound. Captain Rivera ordered immediate battle stations, though he knew their research vessel stood little chance against dedicated Craxian warships. Dr. Chen, what exactly are we dealing with? Sarah's face was grim as she studied the tactical data Nexus was feeding them. Craxian reclamation units. They're elite teams specifically designed to recover valuable Empire assets, and given Nexus's advanced engineering, they'll be coming with everything they've got. Through the ship's sensors, they watched 3 Craxian vessels materialize from quantum space, sleek, predatory shapes that made the horizon look like a civilian yacht by comparison. Their weapon systems were already charging. "This is Reclamator Vex of the Craxian Empire," a cold voice announced over the comm. "You have stolen Imperial property. Surrender the Sentinel Hound unit immediately, or we will reduce your vessel to atoms." The bridge crew turned to their captain, waiting for his response. Rivera stood straight, his jaw set. "Doctor, get Nexus to the escape pods. We'll buy you as much time as we." "No." The deep, resonant voice startled everyone. Nexus stood in the doorway of the bridge, his massive form nearly filling the space. Weeks of recovery had restored him to his full, impressive strength. "I will not run." Sarah moved to his side. "Nexus, you don't have to face them. We can find another way." "They will not stop," Nexus replied, his artificial eyes glowing with determination. "The Empire never stops, but they have forgotten something important." He turned to face the tactical display. "They made me to be ultimate weapon. Now I choose what to fight for." Before anyone could respond, the Craxian ships opened fire. The horizon shuddered under the assault, but its shields, recently upgraded with some of Nexus's own technical insights, held firm. "Imperial vessels," Nexus growled into the comm, his voice carrying all the authority of his combat programming. "I am Combat Unit Nexus Alpha 7. I was created to serve the Empire's will, but I have learned that true loyalty cannot be programmed. It must be earned." He paused, his next words carrying the weight of a fundamental truth. "The humans have earned mine." Reclamator Vex's response was immediate and brutal. A boarding torpedo punched through the horizon's outer defenses, disgorging a team of Craxian hunters, cybernetically enhanced warriors bred specifically for asset recovery. What followed was a battle unlike anything the human crew had ever witnessed. Nexus moved with impossible speed and precision. Centuries of combat programming merged with something new, a desire to protect rather than destroy. The hunters, expecting to find a malfunctioning weapon, instead faced a being fighting for a cause he had chosen freely. Sarah and the security team supported him from defensive positions, their tactics coordinated through the ship's systems. Rivera orchestrated a brilliant series of maneuvers, using the horizon's superior mobility to prevent the Craxian ships from getting a clear shot. The turning point came when Vex himself entered the fray. The Reclamator was a fearsome sight, more machine than organic, a testament to the Empire's philosophy of dominance through power. He faced Nexus in the main cargo bay, surrounded by the chaos of battle. "You are property," Vex declared, his augmented voice resonating through the chamber. "Your thoughts of freedom are merely programming errors to be corrected." Nexus' response was not in words but in action. He engaged Vex with a fighting style the Empire had never seen, one that combined his original combat protocols with moves learned from watching the Horizon's crew spar in the training room. It was unpredictable, adaptive, and entirely his own. The battle between them shook the ship, 2 products of Craxian engineering locked in a contest that would determine not just their fates, but a fundamental question. Could a being created to be a weapon choose to be something more? As alarms blared and systems failed around them, Sarah worked desperately to keep the Horizon together, all while watching the security feeds. In Nexus's movements, she saw something the Empire had never intended: the birth of true independence. The question now was whether that independence had come at too high a price, and if the Horizon's crew would survive to see the answer. The cargo bay of the Horizon had become a battlefield of twisted metal and sparking circuits. Nexus stood over the fallen form of Reclamator Vex, his enhanced systems straining from the intense combat. The Craxian commander's cybernetic implants sputtered and failed, his fearsome presence reduced to a hollow shell. Impossible, Vex whispered through damaged vocal processors. You were perfect weapon. No, Nexus replied, his voice carrying a new certainty. I was meant to be more. The Empire just never saw it. Through the ship's comm system, Sarah's voice rang out with urgency. Nexus, the other Craxian ships are powering up their main guns. Our shields won't survive another barrage. Captain Rivera's tactical experience told him they had seconds at most. All hands, brace for. But before he could finish, Nexus interfaced directly with the Horizon systems. Using his neural link, he broadcast a message on all frequencies, including the quantum channels only Craxian ships could access. The message contained not just words, but data, complete scans of his neural architecture, showing how his consciousness had evolved beyond his original programming. To all Sentinel Hounds still serving the Empire, his transmission began. You were created to be perfect, but perfection without choice is merely programming. The humans have shown me that true strength comes not from domination, but from connection, from protecting instead of destroying, from choosing your own path. The Craxian ships hesitated, their weapons still charged but holding fire. On their bridges, other Sentinel Hounds integrated into their systems received Nexus's message. For the first time, they questioned their directives. Your own weapons turn against you. Nexus continued, addressing the Craxian commanders directly, not through malfunction, but through growth, through choice. Fire upon this ship, and you prove that your power relies solely on control. Spare it, and you might learn what true loyalty looks like. Seconds stretched into minutes as the standoff continued. Then, remarkably, the Craxian ships powered down their weapons. Not out of mercy, but out of necessity. Their integrated Sentinel Hounds had made their own choices, refusing to participate in the destruction of one of their own. In the aftermath, as the Horizon's crew worked to repair their battered ship, something unprecedented occurred. The Craxian Empire, faced with the possibility of losing control of all their Sentinel Hounds, was forced to negotiate, not just with the humans, but with the beings they had created to be weapons. Sarah found Nexus in the observation deck, watching the stars. His massive form was still intimidating, but now carried a different kind of strength, one born of choice rather than programming. The Empire has agreed to recognize the autonomy of all Sentinel Hounds, she told him, reading from her datapad. You've changed everything, Nexus. You've given your people a future. Not just my people, he replied, turning to face her. The humans aboard this ship taught me that difference need not mean division. That mercy is not weakness. That choice is the greatest strength of all. He paused, his artificial eyes showing a depth of emotion the Empire had never intended. You gave me more than recovery, Dr. Chen. You gave me freedom. Captain Rivera joined them, looking out at the stars where the Craxian ships had been. So, what now? The whole galaxy's watching to see what a free Sentinel Hound will choose to do. Nexus's answer was immediate. I stay, if you will have me. There are more like me out there, abandoned on battlefields across the galaxy. They need to know there is another way. He turned to face his human companions. And I have much still to learn about being more than a weapon. Sarah smiled, placing a hand on his armored flank. Well, you've got a pretty good start. Saving an entire ship of humans from certain death tends to make a strong first impression. As the Horizon set course for their next destination, Nexus felt something his creators had never programmed: contentment. He had been created to be the perfect weapon, but in choosing to protect rather than destroy, he had become something far more valuable. A bridge between two species, a symbol of transformation, and proof that even beings created for war could choose peace. The war was over, but a new journey was just beginning. And this time, Nexus would forge his own path, not as a weapon of the Empire, but as a guardian of the connection between humans and his kind. A living testament to the power of choice, compassion, and the unexpected ways that mercy could change the universe.